My name is Sheldon Mills. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Guava. And today we're going to be trying a little different format from previous webinars, actually. We're going to have a Q&A session addressing the most frequent questions we receive regarding archiving, best practices, and Retain. Joining me today is Q Mangus. He is our Director of Product Marketing at Guava. I'll be filling the questions, and Q will be answering them. We have a number of questions we want to get through. However, if you have any questions as we go through this webinar, please put them through in the Q&A panel or the chat panel, and Q will be sure to address those. Just how to do that real quick. You just scroll over the top. At the top, you'll see the little green bar. Just scroll over that, and you'll see an option to chat with participants. You can put your questions in through there, or if you click on the little drop down, you'll see a little Q&A, and you can put your questions in there.
Great, and thanks everyone for being here and welcome to the webinar. We're really excited for this topic. Once again, my name is Q Mangus. I've been on a number of these webinars and hope that what we go over today is something that you can benefit from. Like Sheldon was saying, we've tried to gather questions that people have been asking us, whether that's at events or on these webinars, to be able to address them in a topic like this and see how this format works. So hope you can bear with us as we do this, and hope it's something that you'll enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks, Hugh. So with that, we'll just jump right in. So let's get started. Our first question, why should I archive?
Great. So this is a pretty loaded question. I just want to say the reasons that you should be archived, there's a lot of reasons why you should be archiving, and it all depends on your organization as well. Like what industry you're in, and the size of your organization. There's a lot of things. So let me just start off by saying that one of the things that you want to make sure is that you are managing your information. And I actually have a slide that shows that here, a little bit about the ideas behind the growth of information. So really, as your business continues to go, as time marches on, digital business data that is stored grows at a rate of about 40 to 60% each year. So your data stores can continue to grow and continue to have needs to have more and more storage. And here's an example of a typical mailbox. Let's say the mailbox has about a gig per user, and you have 1,000 users. That can equal about a terabyte of data. So that is a reason to want to be able to archive, is to be able to manage your digital business data. And how do you do that? Well, or I should say, how does an archive do that? So an archive, when you archive your digital business data, it actually will compress the information. So as it's pulled off of, let's say, on an email system, as it pulls the information off of the email system, that data is compressed, so now your digital footprint is smaller, and it's stored with single instance storage. In Retain, it's stored with single instance storage, meaning that now if there's multiple emails that are sent out there, multiple attachments, Retain's going to just store one of those, and then it's pointed to that. So that helps you reduce the size of your of the data that's required, but also it's going to help you manage it. And what I mean by that is that when something is archived in Retain, it's indexed, and then you can go back and you can easily search what's in there. So now it's managing your data. So that's one thing on why you should archive. The other reason is, as I was stating, is industries have different regulations. So there are regulations that discuss and require and mandate that you're archiving as well. So that's the other part of it as well, is to comply with regulations. So that's kind of the twofold reason to be archiving, is to manage your data and to comply with regulations.
Right. Those are good reasons why. So we talked about why. What should I archive?
Okay, great. So the what should you archive? This is also interesting because it depends on your on your organization as well and the industry that you're in. But most industries, especially regulated industries, it's required by regulations that they archive all electronic communication. So that means email communication, social media communication, mobile communication. Those are things that are required by regulations. Now, with that being said, you should be archiving those kind of communications, once again, email, social media, mobile. You should be doing that just to make sure that you're protected. That's the what, right? You should archive those electronic communications because it will ensure that you comply with regulations, and it will ensure that you are protected in case of litigation, in case of regulatory investigation. So I'm kind of going into the why again, but it kind of justifies the what. You need to be able to archive electronic communication to manage your data, once again, to comply with regulations, and then just to do the other reason behind doing that is you want to be able to preserve your corporate data. There's a lot of information that is sent via email, social media, mobile communication. That's really your company's identity, digital identity, right? It kind of gives you a history of everything that your company's been doing, what they've been communicating, and so you should archive those electronic communications for that reason as well, to be able to go back and see how your company's evolved, what your employees have been saying. There's a lot of information that can be gleaned from that as well.
Right. You mentioned regulations. What regulations could affect what and how I archive?
Good, great. I also have a slide about that. Let me pull that up here. So you can see here there's a lot of different regulations, and it depends on your organization. The ones that are on the screen here mainly apply to North America. There are also other regulations. I won't get into that in this presentation that apply to other countries, but if you are in another country, I would encourage you to make sure that you go and research what regulations would apply to you. For this discussion, I'm going to talk about North America mainly. But so let's kind of go through this. With financial services, the big ones are up here. So there's the Dodd-Frank Act. And what the Dodd-Frank Act really does, and this is where the what comes in, right? So the Dodd-Frank Act is mainly about mobile communications, because what happens is that in the Dodd-Frank Act, if you're a financial organization and you're involved in any kind of regulatory investigation, they're going to actually ask that mobile communications in particular, but any electronic communications, be produced within 72 hours. So if you're not archiving those, if you don't have those in an archive, it's going to be difficult to go back and get them, especially within 72 hours. And so that's where Retain comes in, and it archives those and gives you access to them easily. So with Retain and the ability it has to search and bring back results of your archived communications, you can easily comply with the Dodd-Frank Act. And then you have the GLB Act, SEC rules, Sarbanes-Oxley, the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure was FRCP, FCA, PRA, ESMA. Those are a number of them that deal with financial, and of course there's the FINRA laws as well. And most of those cover the same thing, where they mention and they talk about that when it comes to financial, you have a lot of regulations on what you can be saying. So if you're sharing trade information, if you're giving stock tips, those all need to be things that you can go back and show that were done appropriately and were communicated appropriately. So you need to be able to archive those. And the different regulations will tell you at different times on how much you can, or how long you need to be keeping them. Generally, it's about 7 years. And so these regulations state that all your electronic communication is subject to supervisory review and procedures, and that they must be maintained and easily and readily available to be produced. So that's financial. Okay, so in healthcare, you have HIPAA and high tech. And these really have to do with protecting, being able to prove that you haven't shared protected health information, or PHI. Your electronic communication can't contain medical records and payment history. So once again, you need to be able to archive, all of your electronic communication so that you can go back and prove that it didn't contain that kind of information. And also the archive needs to be in a format that is protected, and that's something that Retain does as well. And then when it comes to government, if you're in a government organization, both federal and local, federal has to deal with FERPA, and there's other regulations that they have to deal with archiving. And then, of course, there's the Freedom of Information Act, which actually applies to any kind of government institution, and that has to do with the ability, once again, to reproduce official government communication. And so, once again, that you need to be archiving email, social media, mobile, electronic communication to comply with that. And as you can see here on the screen, it shows that an organization must respond and adhere to an information request within 10 days of its receipt. So you need to be able to reproduce that. So having an archive is essential to that. And then every other organization has to archive because of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. That applies to everybody. And that, once again, is you need to preserve all electronic communication. And especially if you're going to be involved in litigation, the court will generally send out what they call a duty to preserve, meaning that you need to now ensure that everything that has to do with that court case is preserved, is archived and retained, so that the courts can go back and review that. So that's really one other thing that I wanted to make mention of, really quick, is with the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, there is also the concept of proportionality, which basically states that you only have to archive what regulations mandate or what your policies dictate. So if you have policies that only state that you have to keep things for 2 or 3 years, you want to be able to have that stuff drop off at the instant that it hits that policy. So let's say that your policy dictates that you keep all your electronic communication for 2 years. Once it hits the 2 years, you want those messages older than 2 years to be deleted, because you will not be held liable for having that. So that's the idea there, is you want to make sure, and then Retain does this, of course, is that you have policy-based retention where you can set how old emails are before they're archived and then how long they stay on there, whether that's email or other electronic communication.
Got it. There's a lot of regulations out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely.
That last one, the litigation, I think it's a little bit of an understatement. That, and the atmosphere is such, it's not if but when, right? So I think that hard to overstate that, the preparation for when that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I realized I have a quote. That's good. Thanks, Sheldon. That's awesome. We have a quote here from Gartner that I'll just throw up there. But yeah, it's not a matter of if you're going to be involved in litigation. It's when that. And Gartner's actually seen that most companies will be involved in some kind of litigation or regulatory action by the end of this year.
Well, so we've talked about the why and the what of archiving. What are some of the top concerns that an organization might have when it comes to archiving?
Great. So, yeah, when it comes to archiving, some concerns that we've seen people express, a lot of them have to do with the ease of use, right? Being able to have an archive that they can use and their end users will use. So that's important. You need to be able to grant your users access to the archive, have an archive that's easily accessible and searchable. Those are big areas that people are concerned about, is accessing the archive. Some other things that people have concerns with is being able to retrieve deleted emails, right? That's something that that concerns everybody is if something gets deleted, whether by accident or just can't be found, that by having an archive, you need to be able to easily restore those kind of messages back to the live system. Some other concerns is what to do with, let's say, mobile communications, what to do with social communications, how to mitigate the risks that are involved with that, because we know that employees are using social media at work, and you need to be able to make sure that you have oversight of what they're doing. So that's a concern that many people have, is how they can deal with those other forms of communication, which goes along with how do you work with inappropriate posts, and maybe how do you differentiate between personal and business communication. Those are all concerns that people have, kind of more of generally with collaboration, but of course they need to know how they should be archiving that as well. So yeah, that's a few concerns. Oh, another one that's big is the idea behind data leakage. Having important information or proprietary information about your company being posted, being emailed, being sent out there without oversight, and what could that potentially do to your organization, and how that could damage your reputation. So that's something that's a concern when it comes to, once again, with the collaboration. And so you need to make sure that that you have an archiving solution in place that will help you mitigate those risks. And I would imagine that we'll probably hit on some of the things as we go through here on how we can mitigate that.
Awesome. You mentioned social media, about archiving that. I wanted you to go into a little more detail about how we can monitor and archive corporate social media, but what about something as personal, something like someone's personal social media?
Good. So here's kind of the way we're looking at it. We know that people are using social media at work. There's tons of social media at work. You have people accessing Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it may be. People are accessing social media. However, sorry, just was thinking there for a minute. People are going to access social media. You need to make sure that you have oversight of that. So really, we know that your employees are going to demand that they access social media. So how do you prevent the risks of social media? Because we know there's a lot of risks. There's risks of, as we kind of were talking about, data leakage, inappropriate posts. Maybe your employees are posting things online that they shouldn't be, maybe harassing other people, maybe even posting things that they don't think is inappropriate but might be inappropriate. So the idea here is that you need to be able to grant your employees access to social media. They need to be able to access social media, but you need to have control over that. And the reason being is if you try and take an approach where you just block it completely, they're going to find ways around that. They're going to go and they are going to maybe access it via their own personal device on their smartphone, or access it off the network, whatever the case may be. But if you allow your employees to access it on your network, but you monitor and archive it, now you have some oversight. Now you can see what they're communicating, and you can archive that. And even better yet, if you have a policy in place, you should have a social media policy that states what your employees can and cannot be what they can and cannot be posting. If you have that policy in place and you let everybody know that, look, you can access social media, but we are going to be monitoring it and we're going to be archiving it. Now you're making sure that your employees are informed, that they know what's going on, and then that's going to deter bad behavior. And it will actually encourage good behavior, because social media is great. It can really help you to get your message out, to have your employees communicate with your customers and with other employees. It's a great collaboration tool. So you want to be able to give your employees that access. It's going to be a good business benefit, but you want to be able to to have oversight of it as well. And let me actually just pull this up really quick, a little bit about Retain Social, which is the piece of Retain that actually monitors and archives social media. So Retain can monitor content based on policies that you state, and there's actually an agent for off-network monitoring and archiving. So if your employees are off the network and they're using social media, you can actually install something on their machine so that it can be monitoring that as well. And then there's also great access to the corporate social media access portal. And what this is it allows your employees to access your corporate social media without having to log in. So you can grant access to teams. You can set that up in Retain so that different teams can access your social media without having to log in. And then, of course, if they leave the company, they're not going to have your login credentials to your social media, so you're not going to have to worry about changing it every time you have turnover. And then finally, I know Sheldon mentioned about what you should do with a corporate social media account. Yes, that's something that you need to be monitoring as well. You need to be viewing that on occasion and making sure that inappropriate things don't get posted there, and you can have oversight of what's being said. So that's important as well, and Retain Social helps with that. And what it does is, on the archiving side of it, anytime somebody in your organization accesses social media and accesses your corporate social account, it's going to archive everything that's on that social account. And then there's another piece that's just specifically for Facebook where it can actually monitor your Facebook account, as many corporate social Facebook accounts that you have, and ensure that people aren't posting things that are inappropriate or maybe that are sensitive information. It'll actually monitor that and prevent that from happening.
It occurs to me that it's not only to protect the company and the reputation, it also is there to protect the employee. I think a use case, maybe I'm sure many people have heard about the U.S. Airways, the tweet that accidentally got let out that was incredibly inappropriate. I mean, accidents happen, right? So it's not just what might be an intentional, whether it's defamation or sensitive information that shouldn't be spread, but things that maybe people aren't aware of that shouldn't go out as well.
I'm going to put in a plug for our blog post. There was a recent blog post that we put out there that kind of addresses what we just talked about, having that oversight for your employees and how it can protect you and your organization. So if you want to, everyone on here, I just encourage you to visit our blog. It's guava.com/blog. There's great information on there. There's blog posts about lots of things, but one in particular is about that social media and why you should be monitoring social media and how that can protect you and your organization.
Awesome. Great. Let's see. Let's switch topics slightly. So what advice do you have for archiving mobile devices? What about BYOD? There's lots of companies bringing their own, whether it's corporate mandated or bringing their own devices to work. What do you say about that?
Great. Yes, mobile is a hot topic right now, right? We know that organizations are really trying to figure out what they should be doing to ensure that mobile is managed. That's the best way to put it. So I'm going to talk a little bit generalities, and I'm going to talk about what Retain Mobile does specifically. But when it comes to advice, I would say that you need a policy. I hit that on social media, but this applies to everything. You need a electronic communication policy. So for your email communication, you need to be able to have a policy about how and what your employees are communicating. For your social media, for your mobile, heck, for even web searches, you need to be able to allow or outline, I should say, what your employees can and can't do. And then you need to train them on that. So if you have decided in your company that you're going to allow your employees to bring their own personal devices into work and use your email system and use Facebook and use your network, you need to have a policy that states that, and you need to have a policy that states what is appropriate and inappropriate for them to do with their own personal devices. Also, if you have decided to just issue corporate-owned devices to all your employees, you need to have a policy that states that says that, and says what they can and can't do on those corporate issued devices. And be aware that there's probably a good chance that if you issue a corporate device, that your employees may use that corporate device for personal communication as well. So you need to have a policy that dictates exactly what they're going to do. So if you're not comfortable with that, you probably need to make sure that that's outlined. Also, if you issue corporate devices, there might be a chance that people are going to carry two devices. They'll carry one for the business use and one for personal. So what do you think of that? Is that something that's okay for you? Do you want to allow your employees to bring in personal devices even if they're not using it on the network? That's something that it all depends on your organization and how secure you want it to be. I know and I've talked to customers out there that have environments that are so secure that they do not allow their employees to bring in their own personal devices into work. However, they need to allow those employees to communicate via mobile, and so they have corporate issued devices. So it all depends on what level of security you're comfortable with. But yes, once again, I've kind of hit that hard today, but make sure you have a policy. If you don't have a policy, you need to get one right now. Right after this call, right after this webinar, go and talk to the people you need to talk to and get one written up. And then make sure that your employees are regularly trained on it.
Right, and we have some resources, some sample policies if you want to look at those as well.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, if you go out to our website, we do have a sample social media sample policy, and if you're interested in that, yeah, please feel free to put that through in the chat, and we'll make sure to get that through to you. Now, with mobile in particular, I'm going to hit on Retain Mobile and what it does. So we try to address both situations, meaning we try to address if you have corporate-owned devices and if you have your employees bringing in their own devices, a BYOD. So let me hit on the high level. On the high level, you have Android and BlackBerry communications that are archived. Mobile archives, or Retain Mobile archives SMS and MMS and phone call logs for Android. And then SMS, MMS, BBM, PIN, and phone call logs for BlackBerry. For Android, it's done via an app that's put on the phone, and it collects that information as it goes across. So if somebody's bringing in their own device and it's an Android device, that would be the way that you could archive what they're doing and have oversight of it, is by having that app on their phone that will now archive it. For BlackBerry, it's done through the BlackBerry Enterprise Service, so it's seamless to the users. If they have a BlackBerry, they're not going to notice what's going on. It'll take the logs from BES and archive those and put it into a format that's searchable. One great thing, too, is that all these communications are archived into one central archive that can be easily searched, along with the email, social, instant messaging, and search. Those are all archived in one central archive that can be searched, accessed, and you can have e-discovery performed on it. Now, what's also interesting that we've done lately, and that is we've teamed with a company called CellTrust, and to actually give you the ability to have kind of a dual persona for your phone, meaning that what CellTrust does is they've created an app that goes on your phone, and it connects to their what they call the CellTrust Secure Server. Actually, I think I might have a slide on this here. Yeah, right there. So what it does is you've got your employees that are subscribers that have this app on their phone. You can deploy that onto their personal phone or onto a corporate device, and it works with Android or iOS. So this is great because now you have the ability to archive iOS, and I'll explain in a minute how. But so your subscribers, as they're communicating from one subscriber to another, it goes to the CellTrust server, and that's all secure and encrypted from one subscriber to another. And that's all archived as well in Retain, and it's archived in context, so you can go back and search. And then outside of the network, so if there's if they're texting or calling somebody who's a non-subscriber, it's encrypted up until the moment it hits the carrier. So a message will go from the subscriber phone, hit the CellTrust Secure Server. That will be archived in Retain, of course. Then it will go out, it will hit the carrier, and then it will go to the non-subscriber. That communication is all encrypted and secure up until it hits the carrier, but it's all archived as well. And so now you have the ability to allow your employees to communicate with their personal device personally on the one side, and then on a business side using the app. And this app will actually assign a separate business phone number to the phone and will allow you to have encrypted communications and be able to have oversight of them via archiving.
That's very powerful. I learn something every day, and I deal with this a lot. How is talking a little bit more about Retain in general now? How is Retain different from other archiving solutions?
Awesome. Yeah, I hit on that a little bit here, but let me talk to that a little bit more. I might have a slide on that one. Let's see. So Retain is different. Yeah, this one will probably work. Retain is different than the competition, and some of the advantages it has is like we have as kind of the tagline below it, which is unified archiving. The idea behind unified archiving is that we archive more than just email and more than just one email platform. So if an organization has multiple email systems that they're running, so let's say you're running Exchange today and you're looking to deploy Office 365. Well, if you want to continue to run Exchange for certain employees, but you're going to deploy Office 365, Retain will archive both of those. It'll take messages from Exchange and Office 365 and archive them in a platform agnostic format. And if you're running, let's say you're running Exchange for your, I know this happens a lot with schools. They have Exchange for their staff and then Gmail for their students. Well, with Retain, you can archive Exchange and Gmail at the same time. And as I stated before, the archive is platform agnostic. So it makes migration really easy. If you're moving from one email system to another, which we all know that never happens, right? You never have to move. So when you do have to move, you can have an archive, and that's going to tie to Exchange, to Gmail, to GroupWise. It ties to any of those. So if you have to move from one to the other, you can have an archive that will work with any of those systems. The other thing that makes it different is that it doesn't just archive email. It archives mobile, and we talked about how it archived mobile. It archives social. We talked about that, and one thing I did kind of gloss over is that it also archives instant messaging. It archives Google Hangouts, Link, soon to be Skype for Business, Yahoo, AOL Instant Messaging. That's all archived as well, and it archives search for YouTube, Google, Bing, Yahoo, Wikipedia. All of those type of things are archived, and on the social and search side, it's actually filtered and monitored into one central archive. And that archive can be searched. There's built-in e-discovery tools to be able to, if you're involved in litigation or regulatory investigation, you can go back and search and export those. That's all built in there. So that's really how it's different. How we're different from the competition is that we have that central archive that can be accessed by end users to access their own personal archive. It can be accessed by administrators and other named users. So that's the advantage of Retain, is that it gives you an easy interface. It gives you one central location for all electronic communication.
Got it. It's if I can sum that up in a nutshell, it's the multi-platform. It's so much more than just email, from Yahoo to LinkedIn and Twitter. Everything social, even searches and mobile. It can package it all.
Perfect. Absolutely, for sure.
Cool. Well, that's perfect. It leads me to the next question. So how we can archive all this stuff? How does that help with e-discovery?
So, yes, absolutely. As I stated a little bit before, there are built-in e-discovery tools. There are specific ones as well. Let me see. I think I have a slide of a search view here. A screenshot. Let me find it here. So here, I just wanted to show you, here's an example of search results. So when it comes to an archive, you need the ability to search is key. You need to be able to quickly get search results, and that's true for just information governance, for being able to find lost messages, and then of course for e-discovery. So if you have a search that you need to do, you come in here, you type in a search, and all results that are brought back, or all results that pertain to that search, whether that's an email, an appointment, instant message, text message, all is displayed in one central location, in one central search result. And so, as you can see here, when you do a search, it brings back results no matter what the type of communication is. And now, from this set of results and from Retain, you can do certain things. You can place a litigation hold on the messages, which is this right here. That's a litigation hold. You can create message tags for these, which is also something that's important. So if you go through and you do a search and you want to tag all those messages that let's say they pertain to a legal case that you're involved in, you can put a message tag, and then you can go back and search that tag. As you can see over here, there is a search for the tags. Then you also have the ability to forward messages, which is important for e-discovery, export messages to PDF, which is essential if you're involved in litigation. You're going to have a PDF. And the PDF's great because it's also, when it's exported to PDF, that can be searched as well. And it's fully indexed for you to go through and find messages and see the messages in context as well. You can print from here. And then there's also a great tool that we have, which we call the Retain Publisher or the Standalone Archive Viewer, where you can take all of these messages that you've searched or any subset of the archive, and you can export them to the Standalone Archive Viewer. And this is, as it states, standalone, so you can put it onto a CD, a DVD, or a jump drive and hand that off to another team. So if you have maybe an e-discovery team or a legal team that you don't want accessing your full archive, you can give them that subset in the publisher. And the publisher has tools built in for redaction, for strikeout, and then it can also be exported once again to PDF. So those are powerful e-discovery tools to be able to go back and search, to be able to place those holds, to be able to export, and to be able to have that standalone viewer. Also, with Retain, you can grant rights to different users. So if you do want to give access to a discovery team or to a legal team to your archive and not have to burden your IT department with doing those kind of requests, you can do that. You can just name a user in there and give them rights. So that's also important for e-discovery.
So you're prepared for not if, but when you get litigated against, I guess.
That's right.
So how does Retain work with Office 365, Exchange, Gmail, and GroupWise?
Awesome. So yes, each system is a little different. They're very similar though. So with Exchange and Office 365, the way that so first I'll state what we archive there. So basically with any email system, we're going to archive email messages, appointments, attachments, tasks, calendar items, and then of course email messages, and they're all archived with single instance storage. I think I stated that before, but it's archived once, and then you can point to it, and so in a search through the index it will find it, but it's only archived once, so it's going to reduce the size of your archive. And then with the integration pieces with Exchange and Office 365, it ties directly, I should say with all of the email systems that we support, it ties directly to the email server. And so with Office 365 and Exchange, it uses journaling if you choose to do it that way. So it uses journaling to pull the email messages down into Retain. Or you can use impersonation. And that's how it integrates with Exchange and Office 365. With Gmail, it uses an IMAP connection to be able to, it connects directly to Gmail to pull those down in a similar way to Office 365 and Exchange. So it's not scraping individual email inboxes, which is pretty common for other archiving solutions. It's actually tying directly to Gmail. And then with GroupWise, it's the same thing. It ties directly to the GroupWise server and pulls it down that way. So it's not something that's tied per user, like into Outlook or into the GroupWise client or into the Gmail system. It's actually done on the server level, and it communicates direct, and Retain directly communicates with that email server to bring it down.
Got it. So what if a user has multiple devices, mobile devices? How does that work with Retain?
So yes, going back to Retain Mobile, it's essential, as I was talking about with policies and bring your own device and those kind of things, that there's more than likely your users have multiple devices. They may have a phone and a tablet. Retain does not limit how many devices a user has. So what it does is it's tied to each user. So if a user has multiple devices, that does not matter. It's going to tie them all back to that user. So if I have, let's say I have a BlackBerry and I have an iPhone and I have an Android and I have an iPad, all of those can be, all the messages through those type of mobile devices will be archived, and it will be archived in a central archive, and it's tied to the user. So all of those devices that I have will come back and it's tied to my username. So that's how it works. So that's all archived. It doesn't matter how many devices. They're all brought back into Retain.
Awesome. Great. What's a typical customer size?
So when it comes to our customer base, we have customers that range from anywhere from 10 to 20 seats all the way up to about 40,000. However, probably the sweet spot is between 2,000 and 5,000 users. That's pretty common. That would probably be our average customer size. But yeah, the system is scalable, so it can go from a small installation all the way up to something large.
Awesome. Great. Lastly, and this is always the big question everybody wants to know, what does Retain cost? And is that cost worth it?
Good. Awesome. So the cost of Retain is per seat. So the way that it's set up is there's a base cost for Retain, and then each module has a cost associated with it as well. So if you want to do archiving for email, you're going to pay a cost per seat, and then you can add on social media, mobile on top of that, and then that would just be an add-on. So it depends. The cost for you as an organization depends. Depends on the size of your organization, what industry you're in. So I'm not going to give you the exact number, but just know it's priced per seat, and there's a fee for implementing Retain, and then for each module. But yes, the secondary question was, is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it. And I'm not just saying that because I believe Retain's a great product. I do. But also, in general, having an archive will save you time and money. We talked about e-discovery. By being able to have simple and easy e-discovery, you're going to save time in legal if you're ever involved in litigation. You're going to save legal costs and time. The idea that we were talking about with information governance, being able to manage these ever-growing data stores by having an archive, you're saving money there with the data footprint. By granting end users access to the archive, you're going to save your IT department time. By granting other users rights to the archive as well, you're saving tons of time with your IT department, and they can be freed up to do other things, or you can reduce the costs there. So yes, there is a cost associated, but the cost savings outweigh the costs that you will have to pay for an archiving solution in general, and of course for Retain.
Right. Well, that is all the questions we have at the moment. I was wondering if there's anything else that you would like to add here as we wrap it up, Q.
But yeah, just to kind of finish up, once again, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I'd encourage you, if you are not currently using Retain, to check us out. You can learn more about us at guava.com/Retain. You can view more videos. This particular webinar is recorded, and it's on youtube.com it will be available on youtube.com/GuavaTV, and we have other webinars as well that are on that channel as well that you can go back and view. And I'd encourage you to check them out and give us a try. As I stated, we have some good advantages over the competition and can really ensure that you have an archive that's easy to use and that can make sure that you're managing your information.
Awesome. Great. Can you pull up that first slide that has your contact information, both of our contact information?
Yeah, let me grab it really quick here. So here is our contact information. If you want to give us an email, or you can actually follow us on Twitter, send us a tweet. We're happy to talk to you. I'll leave that up for just a second, and then right at the end here, I'll show you a slide where you can go to download a free 30-day trial if you want to try it out. Let me go to that one really quick as well. All right. So yeah, once again, if you want to try us out, feel free to download there, or feel free to contact us there. Thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for your time. And thanks Sheldon for fielding the questions.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.